Okay, hi, my name is Feroze, and I'm a PhD student at UC Berkeley. I am a former teacher of almost a decade, uh, and I also work as a teacher coach. I just have a lot of hats that I wear. So this is my final school presentation for the new school creation class. I start with this map. I'm going to keep coming back to this map just as a little centering device. So I'm going to start by discussing the mission of the school, the neighborhood and student body, moving on to philosophy, teaching staff, as well as then pedagogy, architecture, and then the building itself. Or actually, it's a sample building. So I'm going to start by discussing the mission of the school, and my goal with creating a mission was to make it both knowable and doable. So the mission is to prepare and inspire all students to be just, intelligent, and capable change agents in their community. So what's in this mission? Focusing on the word all students. All students equals democracy or democratic ideal to me. It's about serving a social equity function and attracting the underserved, but it is not about turning people away. Just is about social justice. Intelligent is representative of rigorous content, and the word capable is representative of capacity and habits. And I included in their community because I wanted to focus the school not on an idea of democratic equality, of running away to New York to become a lawyer or anything like that. Patrick, can you hold on 1 second? Can I edit this out for just a minute? Okay, we can start again. Sorry. So what's not in this mission is immeasurable ideals. And by that, I refer to things like, I've seen missions that involve things like respectful, socially conscious, or kind. These are great, but they're fluffy and they're difficult to make concrete. I also did not stick in anything like going to college or becoming a president. Sometimes I think those concrete goals of going to college set up a lot of kids for failure if they discover that college is not for them. Nothing excessively jargonistic. Nothing like lifelong learner. 21st century is not in there. I think a lot of times we talk about 21st century skills that were perfectly appropriate in the 16th and 17th centuries. This particular mission statement is 18 words, and that's part of being knowable. I think it's really important for students and staff and even parents to know the mission and to be able to know the mission. And I also did not stick in a preferred student body that we only serve one particular community or another. So next I'm going to move on to discuss the neighborhood and the student body. So I chose the neighborhood of the Diamond District in Oakland. So the Diamond District, you can see there's a very rough outline of the city limits of Oakland up here. And the Diamond District is pretty well central. These are the demographics for all of Oakland. I'll get back to that later. So characteristics of the Diamond. It's a historic neighborhood. It is a transitional neighborhood, both geographically and in terms of demographics. Oakland, let me go back. Oakland is set up such that there are flat areas that tend to be lower socioeconomic status than these hills up in this area. The hills tend to be rather wealthy. In the neighborhood, there are lots of local resources. There's public spaces, there's parks, there's a watershed, rec center, a public library. There's a lot of nearby businesses in a small business district, and there's excellent freeway and bus access. So the Diamond has an interesting history. This is a picture of one of the main strips, MacArthur, that runs right through the heart of the city. MacArthur is a major spine through the city, and you can see this is a photo of it that I could not find an exact date for, but one of the earlier parts of Oakland that was settled. And I think that's relevant in terms of learning in place and learning where you are. The local park, this is Diamond Park, has lots of resources. It has lots of green space, a supervised pool, a playground, lots of undeveloped land. It has a historic site from one of the early settlements, Saucil Creek, which I'll discuss, trail access that attaches it to a very large trail or large regional park. They have after-school programs. They just have tons and tons of resources there. Whoops. So nearby is this is Redwood Regional Park. So this down here is where the Diamond District is, and it attaches through this series of trails to Redwood Regional Park, which is a really well-known park around the area. Just think towering redwoods, native oak trees. The creek headwaters are up there, miles and miles of trails, huge views of the Bay Area. It's a really beautiful park, and there is tons of opportunity for study and exercise. There is a pretty deep ecosystem there, as well as some interesting issues with invasive species and so on. So the Saucil Creek watershed, this would be the Diamond right about here. Diamond lies along this watershed, and it's a really interesting urban watershed. It has the kinds of issues you would imagine with an urban watershed. When I was there was lots of issues of people dumping paint into the gutters, and the gutters spill into the watershed. And there's a small fish population in that watershed that was dying because of this. And so it's just interesting urban versus natural issues that can be explored through this watershed. It goes underground at some points, it comes back out, it floods occasionally. It's just a really interesting kind of interesting opportunity for learning. I mean, if you can see the theme developing, I like to get outside the classroom, and so this is a great opportunity to do so. So I have a few slides, there's about 7 or 8 of these that discuss the demographics of the Diamond District, and I'm just going to rush right through it just to show you where it's located within the grander Oakland setup. So again, this is the city limits of Oakland, and the Diamond is pretty well central. This actually is another city within a city. It's called Piedmont. It is fabulously wealthy, has its own police force, its own tax system. It's just a different thing. But you can sort of see how it's kind of a bubble within Oakland. So income-wise, you can see the lower income in the flats. This is East Oakland, West Oakland, and this is the Fruitvale District, and the Diamond sits right on top of the Fruitvale. Home values, you can see the same thing. The hills just have a much higher home value, and you can see the Diamond situated between them. Owner-occupied homes, this is going to give you, for me, this is a sense of who really owns their homes, and this is a measure of neighborhood mobility or family mobility. Poverty levels, you can see near 0%, single-digit poverty levels up in the flats, and much higher poverty levels down low. Greater than 50% poverty, you can see some of East Oakland out here, as well as West Oakland. And also in the Fruitvale District, there's some problems with poverty. Child poverty, this one just breaks your heart. You can see lots of issues with child poverty around the flats. Education levels, that obviously flip the poverty levels. One thing to notice is this area down here, and this is just kind of like where a lot of upwardly mobile folks tend to live, younger folks who, folks running around with Hello Love Oakland t-shirts live in that area. Family size, again, that's the same area of upwardly mobile, single 20-somethings, and then you have much larger families down here in the flats, and much smaller families up in the hills. Foreign born, to give you an idea of where your parents are actually going to be coming from, and who, what languages are going to be spoken at home. And then finally, just something that I thought was interesting as well is population density. So it's situated in these rather dense areas. So to kind of sum all of this up, I wanted the school to be set up. You know, I just was a little bit turned off by the idea of like School of Hope or the ghetto school, and I wanted the school to be located in this transitional area between neighborhoods, sort of at a confluence of these different features that I tried to discuss. So another feature of the school is what I call the reflexive property, which is educating a democracy equals educating a democracy. It's not about, I'm still not entirely comfortable with the idea of educating kids in schools that are intentionally segregated by class or by race. So this is a demographic distribution for Oakland. I couldn't find one for the particular neighborhood I was interested in. I couldn't find that data, but I would like for my school to be as close to this demographic as possible. If it's skewed in any particular direction, I would prefer for it to skew in the direction of poverty. But other than that, I'm not interested in serving just this particular population or just this particular population or anything like that. So school selection I would prefer to do with a computerized lottery. I've worked at schools that had live lotteries, and they're just heartbreaking. It rips my heart out to be at these events. Seeing weeping mothers and children is no fun. I think a computerized lottery can be done fairly, and I think it can be audited pretty rigorously by anybody who is interested in auditing it. The most important selection criteria for me are just gender, zip code, and I say that these are, the reason I put a little asterisk is I think these are important just to make sure that I can control the demographics of the school to make it representative of the city of Oakland and not focused on one particular neighborhood. And then my problem, or the things that I would not be interested in, are merit, test scores, financial support. And I once worked at a small private school that selected students based on character or fit, and I saw that to be, well, you end up with a demographic that looks a lot like the teachers for obvious reasons. So I was not interested in interviewing students for character or fit. So next I want to discuss the philosophy of the school. So the philosophy most generally is the organization is set up as a learning organization, and we organize for and around learning. To set this up on 4 basic principles, the first is that the school is teacher-centric. The second is to favor leadership over governance. The third is to have a shared vision. And the fourth is that it takes a village. So this is something this is an image I like to use both with administrators as well as teacher candidates that I coach, and that is that the teacher is the center of the organization, not the kids, not the parents. Take care of teachers first, then take care of kids, then everyone else. If you take care of teachers, I promise you, the children will be well taken care of. The second is that all support structures are there to support the teacher. The teacher is the one who drives student outcomes. It's the leadership that drives the support systems that drive the student outcomes. Leadership does not drive student outcomes, and that's really important for me. So having the teacher at the center of the organization is really important. Now, leadership. So in saying that I favor leadership over governance, leadership I would define as discretion and cultivation, and I would describe governance as constraints and coordination, control and coordination. So the principal is the head teacher. They are a teacher coach. They are a capable teacher coach, and they act as a teacher coach. They have rich classroom experience, and they are a coalition builder, a relationship cultivator, and a capacity builder within the organization. The school thrives and dies with the principal. So the common mission of the school is, if anything, I would say it centers on consensus building. Staff are on the same page about pedagogy, discipline, expectations for themselves and for kids. There is no opportunity or tolerance for the kind of I didn't vote for that, so I'm not doing it attitude. And that comes from schools, I think, where you have a dominant coalition, or you have a vote by majority, you often have this attitude of, I didn't vote for that, so I'm not going to worry about it. When you run a school by consensus, I think everybody is on the same page about where the school is going. Teachers govern through consensus, as does the leadership team itself. So in thinking about the old adage that it takes a village to raise a child, of course we want your help, just no PTA. I've worked with PTAs, and I'm not necessarily a fan of PTAs, and I've seen more meaningful cooperation from parents. So I would prefer to include parents through structures, meaningful structures, more meaningful structures. I don't want to knock PTAs entirely, but more meaningful structures like student court, leadership councils, which in a school that I worked at is again, a consensus-based decision-making body for amending and approving discipline procedures and other kind of important school calendars, and also important things like that. Community partnerships and building community coalitions through parents, data review teams, both for discipline data, achievement data, and that can be statewide data as well as localized school data. We also have things like a true open door policy. I think a lot of schools say that, and then are a little bit hostile to parents who might just drop in. We have conferencing that is truly one-to-one, and there's a way of doing that before any teachers freak out. There's a way of doing that. I have done that and have led programs where this can be very manageable, that every parent can meet with every student. Or sorry, every parent can meet with every teacher. Regular community events and public exhibitions. Hopefully that will make everybody happy. So the next piece I'd like to talk about is the teaching staff and how to hire a teaching staff, norm them, and talking about pedagogy, architecture, and building. This is kind of a longer section. So first, I'm going to discuss the teaching staff, norming, hiring, and developing a teacher staff. So the first is having a normative disposition. Looking back on my own experiences in startups and small schools, norms, or lack thereof, were some of the most important first steps in creating and maintaining a staff culture, especially as you double and triple in size. It's a very alarming thing to have a first-year school go to a second-year school. It feels like it should become more stable, but it's actually completely destabilized by doubling of parent body, doubling of staff, doubling of students. It's really tough. So having a strong set of norms in your first year, I have found to be far and away the most important thing. Some of these I've already mentioned, so I'm not going to discuss them in particular. So hiring a staff, thinking about onboarding, I actually intend for this to be in the order that they occur. So thinking about the principal's role here would be pre-screening, having teachers come in and do a demo lesson, interviewing with teachers, interviewing with students, interviewing with parents, and interviewing with administration. Thinking about developing a staff as the years go on, moving beyond PD, it's always about time, time, time. So setting up time-efficient structures like critical friends groups, incoming mentors. So any student or any teacher who comes in is assigned a mentor for at least 1 year. Anybody who is in their first 3 years of teaching is assigned a mentor for their first 3 years. I think building a library of common practices or best practices within a school site is very important. Conducting research at the school is also important. And I would focus all of this on the idea of coaching. And I think intercollegial coaching is something that can be done really effectively and really easily and benefits both the coach and the coachee. So next I'm going to discuss the pedagogy of the school. So the pedagogical orientation of the school would be designed and constructed curriculum. So I want to focus on things like projects and problem-based learning, performance and feedback, performance assessment and feedback, and separating those two. And again, keeping things highly relevant, and also displaying work publicly is really important to me. Now, I put a lot of these things in the background because I don't want to say that they're not important. I think tests and quizzes and textbooks and notes and lectures and workbooks and worksheets, I think they actually have their place in education, but I don't think their place is front and center. So if I had a curriculum orientation just around some general principles, there would be everything is interesting. I borrowed that actually from a school here in San Francisco called MindWorks. This idea that there is no such thing as the real world. If you've ever taught math, you know that it's always people are asking about real world problems, and that always drove me a little bit crazy as a math teacher. So just this philosophy that there is no such thing as the real world. Once my classroom feels like it's distinguished between the real world, or it's distinct from the real world, that's kind of a red flag to me, and I'd like to get back out into the real world. This idea that English plus history plus math plus science equals a complete education, I'd like to turn that on its head. I feel like there's a lot more to learn than just those 4 subjects. I've also worked at schools that were something, something, something of arts and tech, and I'd like to just make those not suffixes and make those things that live throughout curriculum, and that burden then falls on the arts and tech teachers. I've also worked as an arts teacher, and I know how that goes. So I would propose extra release time for them to integrate. And finally, just a school-based literacy of writing to learn. So an instructional framework that is interdisciplinary, collaborative, rigorous, complex, relevant, highly literate, active, and public. This is actually just a photo of one of my old classrooms preparing for an interdisciplinary exhibition. And you can see there are students doing all kinds of different things. An instructional framework around rigor and around growth. A through G alignment is a California thing. The University of California system sets out what they call the A through G requirements, and any student who takes them is eligible for UC acceptance or UC admissions. And in California, you can graduate from high school and not be ready for it, even eligible for application to UCs, and I would like to get rid of that. So then this curriculum will make you ready for college, whether or not you want to go. Thinking about equity and access, I would prefer a school that is mainstream, that has supports for struggling students or IEP students, that is both pull out and push in, and I would favor push in support. I would prefer not to have tracks. I would prefer not to have APs, but having worked at schools where for parents this is a major financial issue, having APs, because it can allow their students to take college credits for free while they're still in high school. I'm flexible on that. And I would also like to have technology on campus. And what I mean by that also is technology that is accessible for both parents and students on campus. Thinking about citizenship, I would like to get my students out into the community for a senior project that is strictly about community. And I would like to leave it just there. Hard-focused service projects sometimes undermine the idea of service. Having a junior year internship program, as well as a cohort model to keep students feeling like they're part of a community and part of a small group. I think it was Dewey who said you have to participate in democracy to learn democracy. So as much as possible, I'd like to have students moving together as a group, feeling their own sense of civic sort of ownership over their school. So I just wanted to, I added this slide because I just want to say, yes, we do things differently, but if you think something works, go with it. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. As I mentioned, quizzes are great. Use them once in a while. If you feel like you need to lecture, go ahead and do it. But as an old director of mine said, we hire good teachers because we like what good teachers do. So you're a good teacher, go do what you do. This is the classroom of a teacher at a project-based learning school that I worked at. This is an advisee of mine who was leaning back in his chair. This is what they felt was the most effective thing in the world. Go ahead and do it. If this is what you feel works, go ahead and do what you think works. So the next thing I'd like to discuss is the architecture of the building. If there's a general focus for architecture, I would say it's just do what the building tells you to do. So what is architecture for in a school building? I think it should be adaptable and open and inspiring. This is an example. This actually is an example from that same classroom I had showed you, and this is the same project further along. You can see that there's students doing all kinds of different things. I've got my teaching partner is conferencing, students working on laptops, students working with their hands. There's actually a collapsible wall right about here. And so this project we were working on is too big to fit in one room. So we're able to adapt the space to the project that we're doing. This is not one of my students, but as I was wandering around my own school building, I just happened upon a student up on a ladder painting the wall. This turned into a big mural. And this teacher said, well, there's this big blank wall. It looks like a big blank canvas. Let's paint it. So that's what I mean by just letting the building tell you what to do. Again, just a flexible space. You can see it's taped out. This was the students creating an exhibition. This was going to be a museum night, and they had created all this floor plan. They're out. There's a little bit of frenzy running around, but just an open, flexible space. Again, you can see there's a collapsible wall. This is actually the collapsible wall right here between these two spaces. But I also want to say, if you don't have a big, open, brand new building that has collapsible walls and such, you make do with what you have. This is another school I worked at that was not as well resourced as the other schools that I mentioned. And this is the cafeteria. You can see the disco ball. We had our winter ball the night before, and now we're setting it up for an alternative energy exhibition a week later. Same here. We just, as much as we could, tried to. We had an open debate, or I think this might have been a mock Supreme Court. I forget. But we just try and make the space as flexible as possible with what you got. So the next piece I'd like to discuss is just a model building. Model building is the San Francisco Friends School. It's in San Francisco. So this is the San Francisco Friends School. It's a small private elementary school, but it's a wonderful building. They're known for having this really, among many things, they're known for this really interesting, really neat, in the architecture world, passive heating and cooling system. This is a diagram that's far too complicated for me to understand fully, but it's pretty cool. It's actually in the old Levi Strauss factory, back when Levi Strauss used to make jeans in San Francisco. And so because of that, it's got very interesting history itself. There's lots of issues around why this factory closed, why it moved, who was working there originally, who was working there at the end. I mean, just lots of different issues that you could explore. This is the school building now. It's been converted. Really, the important thing here to notice is the yellow spaces are classroom spaces and blue spaces are common spaces. So actually, this is a common space too. I don't know why it's yellow, but classrooms are all on the outside for purposes of light. There's open gallery spaces. The building has, these are some pictures of the floor of the building, and it's just really interesting. There's just clearly some history there. I don't know what is going on in this space, but it just seems like there's already an interesting story that could be written just as a creative writing activity, just imagining who was there and why this particular piece of wood was replaced and so on. Same thing, I think they did an interesting job of keeping the space interesting. This is how it used to look with the open roofs, and they've actually maintained that as much as possible. This is that open common space I was discussing. It's got lots of natural light. It is a Quaker school, so they do their big open meetings in here. And again, lots of open, flexible space for galleries, for exhibition nights. This is where they do a lot of exhibition nights in here. And same here, you can just see that there's a lot of open space, a lot of flexible, a lot of natural light. Same, just some more of the classroom spaces, and fairly traditional looking classroom spaces. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for watching, and best of luck on your final school proposals.
Cool.